Today we'll begin exploring the integumentary system in more depth. Recall from our brief overview of organ systems in Unit 1 that the integumentary system is the set of organs that forms the external covering of the body, aka the skin. With that in mind, the goal of this video is to describe the structure and function of the skin more generally, and the structure and function of the epidermis in particular. Okay, so let's start by talking about the skin. What are the functions of the skin? There are 5 main functions. First is protection from water, air, infection, chemicals, and UV rays. Second, the skin gives us the ability to experience sensations such as pressure, heat, cold, and pain. Third, the skin aids in body temperature regulation. For example, the body can be heated or cooled by sweat and blood flow near the surface. Fourth, the skin is involved in the excretion of waste, namely waste in the form of sweat. And then fifth, the skin is involved in the production of vitamin D. Now let's talk about the layers of the skin. So this part's about the structure of the skin. There are 3 main layers. The epidermis is on top, or the surface. The dermis is in the middle, and the hypodermis is on the bottom. For the remainder of this video, I want to focus only on the epidermis. As I mentioned a moment ago, the epidermis is the top layer of the skin, and it's composed of what we call stratified squamous epithelial tissue. The stratified just means that it has more than one layer. And squamous just means it's thin or flat. So the epidermis is composed of more than one layer of thin or flat cells that make up the epithelial tissue. All right, there are 5 layers of the epidermis, and I'm going to take these one at a time, starting at the bottom. The stratum basal is the lowest or deepest layer of the epidermis. It is constantly dividing and pushing up cells into the next layer. Above it is the stratum spinosum. The name just means spiny layer, and it gets this name because of the irregular shape of its cells. Several of the cells are thick and contain what are called pre-keratin filaments. A filament is just a structural protein, and keratin is a specific type of structural protein. Keratin is a tough, waterproof material. Okay, above this is the stratum granulosum, and cells here begin to flatten and disintegrate. This layer accumulates keratin granules that are responsible for waterproofing the skin. These keratin granules are just little particles in the cell's cytoplasm. Above this layer is the stratum corneum. It's a layer of dead cells that's approximately 20 to 30 cells thick, and these cells are keratinized, meaning they're filled with keratin filaments, making them very tough and durable. This layer protects the deeper layers, and it's regularly shed from the body. Now, in some parts of the body, particularly the palms and soles of the feet, there's an additional layer of the epidermis that lies between the stratum corneum and the stratum granulosum. This additional layer is called the stratum lucidum. It's a thin layer of translucent cells, again, only found in certain parts of the body, namely the palms and soles of the feet. Now let's talk about melanocytes. First, I'll explain what they are, and then I'll explain how they protect the body. In the bottom 2 layers of the epidermis, the stratum basal and the stratum spinosum, there are spider-shaped cells called melanocytes. And melanocytes produce a pigment called melanin, which is absorbed by the nearby epidermal cells. Darker-skinned people have the same number of melanocytes as light-skinned people. The difference is in the amount of melanin they produce. Now, what is melanin? Melanin protects the skin against harmful UV rays. When UV radiation mutates a skin cell's DNA, the cell begins to divide uncontrollably, and this is what we call skin cancer. There are 3 types of skin cancer related to the epidermis. The first is melanoma. It's uncontrolled division of melanocytes. The second type of skin cancer related to the epidermis is basal cell carcinoma. It's uncontrolled division of cells in the stratum basal layer. And then third is the squamous cell carcinoma. It's uncontrolled division of cells in the stratum spinosum layer. So, to sum up, the skin has several functions, but primarily protects the body. The epidermis is the top layer of the skin, and it grows from the stratum basal towards the surface. Melanocytes produce melanin, protecting the body from UV radiation, which can cause mutations that result in skin cancer.